Crypto Hotep here with another investing video. This video, we're going to take a break from the family stock portfolio and the analysis behind that family stock portfolio, and we're just going to analyze a specific stock within the family portfolio and the steps that I go to when I'm analyzing a stock fundamentally and technically, because if you're familiar with the channel and also my trading channel, you know I'm a charts guy. So first things first, none of this is financial advice. Feel free and do your own research on stocks, crypto, metals, anything you feel like investing in. Please do your own due diligence. So the stock we're going to analyze today is Hershey. Now the reason I'm analyzing Hershey is because this stock in particular is very interesting to me for a couple reasons. So back in 2024, and again, just to reiterate, we do hold this stock in the dad section, i.e. me, in my section of our family portfolio under my food sector. I do hold a position in Hershey. So again, this stock is a little bit interesting to me because back in 2024, the company Mondelez was considering Hershey's acquisition, and this was late 2024, so like December of 2024 they were looking to acquire Hershey. Now again, Hershey's financials, they were kind of dipping, and we'll get into that shortly here. So this kind of propped Hershey's stock up towards the end of the year. This proposed acquisition did not go through, obviously, but because the offer was so low, Hershey's board rejected this acquisition here. So this had me wondering about Hershey as a company, what Hershey's future is, and just kind of making sure that I have an eye out for them, because if the acquisition was rejected and they are up for sale, this kind of has my spider senses kind of tingling here on this business, and I just need to keep my eye to them to make sure there are no surprises, if you will. So just going into here, the tool that I'm using today is stockanalysis.com. I personally like this website when I'm looking at stocks, analyzing the fundamentals and the financials, because stockanalysis.com organizes all this information very succinctly. It's very detailed, it's easy to access. So with the Hershey company, ticker symbol HSY, the big thing with them, if we look at their stock here, is I go to the financials here, and the first thing I did was I looked at their revenue. And their revenue, I always look at the revenue first because I also am a sales guy. I like to see at least the revenue in a upward trend. It doesn't have to really be spiking, but I do want to see the number increase somewhat. So if we look at Hershey currently, because we're looking at a trailing 12 months, because I believe their fiscal ends, if I'm not mistaken, their fiscal ends December 31st, 2024, so they follow kind of like a regular calendar schedule. Their revenue has increased year over year, so that kind of marks my checkoff point here. The revenue growth is down, though. As you can see, it's down dramatically from 2023, so that is a negative, but again, overall the revenue's up. So for me, that's good in my book here. One of the next things I look at is their net income. So their income after they pay for everything, do they still have a profit? And again, from 2020 on, we're looking at a very high uptrend in their net income. That's good for me as well. So the next thing I go to is the balance sheet here, and the balance sheet looks at things like cash, total assets, liabilities, those type of things. So cash and cash equivalents, I do like to see my companies with cash readily available and having the cash that's readily available increase that supply over the years. Now, again, 2020, they had tremendous amounts of cash for obvious reasons. That dramatically went down in 2021, but slowly and surely it's been going up. So this is pretty good in my book with them. Then I look at the total current assets as well as the total assets, and then we look at their liabilities. You want to see the assets obviously outweigh their liabilities, and currently they do. We look at total assets here and then total liabilities. We're looking at almost 13,000 and 8232 here, so I like to see that. Another thing that I like to see that I learned from reading a Warren Buffett book is focused on also the retained earnings. So if you're unfamiliar with retained earnings, they're basically net income previously earned that's not been paid out though to the shareholders as dividends, because the income that's typically earned from a business, they do pay that income out in the form of dividends if it is a dividend company. Hershey is a dividend company, but the retained earnings are the income that's not been paid in the dividends, and it can go back into the company to build up the company and use it as resources and those type of things. I like to see this increasing as well. And as you can see, from 2020 on, we've increased dramatically here. Another thing I like to look at is total debt. I usually like to see total debt somewhat stagnant or decreasing somewhat. It seems to be kind of at a same point, about 5.5 billion, I would say, is a good average. So I'm okay there. And shareholders' equity. I like to see what basically is, or the amount of money that's held by the investors inside the company, and what we're looking at from total assets minus total liabilities from what we spoke about earlier. I normally like to see this increasing. Doesn't have to be increasing greatly. I just like to see that number go up. And as you can see, Hershey's doing a great job there. Next, we go to cash flow. Cash flow kind of goes over a couple things that we've already been over. Net income, like to see that increasing. We just went over that. What else here? Free cash flow. I normally like to see free cash flow going up as well. As you can see, somewhat stagnant for a couple months, but then it has increased. We are increasing trailing 12 months here, 2024. We did go down from 2023, or in 2023 from 2022, but not a big deal breaker for me. Okay. And I also look at a couple ratios. So I look at the PE ratio and how it looks currently from past information, and I see if it's going down, because if it's going down, potentially that company could be undervalued, and it's kind of trekking down. Hershey's trekking down from a PE ratio standpoint. Most importantly, though, is dividends with me, and the main drivers that I look at are dividend yield, which for Hershey, it's 3.38%, which is a decent dividend yield. The payout ratio, which is 50.18%. If the number was anything past 70%, meaning that the company is paying 70% of its income out to dividends, that would be a red flag for me. Okay, depending on the industry, because some industries like REITs, they do pay a certain amount above that 70%. Growth years, how many times have they grown their dividend, which is 10, which is admirable. And then the dividend growth percentage is 14%, which is fantastic. So with that being said, for me, the Hershey company seems like a pretty good buy, a pretty good stock to hold. And I do come back here in stock analysis and look at the forecast. They see estimates on where they see the Hershey stock price. So the low, the average, and the high. I also look to see what the quote unquote analysis are saying currently. Majority of them are at the hold status. There's some sell and strong sells, but majority of them are at the hold status. And then we look at what their financial forecast looks like for this year. So they're forecasting to be up almost 3% in revenue, or 3%. They were up 3% in revenue this year. They're forecasting up, a little less, 2.78% revenue next year. The EPS did go down this year, but again, we're going to hopefully come back next year at 6.75, up 8%. Okay. And then as we can see here, what that revenue is trekking like in the future. So before we saw the revenue from the previous years, and here's what the revenue is forecasted for the next years to come. Now we're looking at somewhat of a decent growth amount. Again, nothing too crazy here, not for Hershey, but earnings per share, after the drop, there may be, again, we're looking at a drop in 2025, but slowly increasing here. So not too bad for Hershey. And last but not least, I do look at the any type of news articles that's going on currently with Hershey. The good thing is with stock analysis, if you scroll down, you'll see some of the news articles here. And what I did find very, very interesting here, 2 days ago, Hershey strikes a deal for an acquisition. Now prior, remember, it was all good just a week ago, right? In December of last year, Hershey was looking to be acquired, and now they are acquiring. They're acquiring Lesser Evil, which looks like it's a popcorn brand. So looks like they're going to be kind of delving into the salty type of snacks here and expanding, which essentially will add to their revenue and bottom line. So I like to see that. So let's go to the charts here and let's see what we have here. So this is Hershey's chart on the 1 week. If you again are familiar with the channel, I do like the 1 week and further timeout charts here. So, and I do trade and invest off of the Heikinashi candlesticks. That's why these candlesticks look a little different than regular Japanese candlesticks, because they're not categorized, but they're made from the average price of the stock. So each candle, right, is a week worth of price on an average. Okay. And so here, from Hershey's standpoint, we could see in November 2023, we had a lot of consolidation here around this $200 mark. The $200 mark seems to be a great psychological level. We can see it rejected down, spiked up, then came back down, and it formed this weekly demand area. And we categorize the weekly demand area by 3 or more bullish candles coming from a down red bearish candle. So here's a weekly demand level here, which shows great buying pressure. And guess where that buying pressure went to? It went to this weekly supply area that was mitigated. Now the mitigated area means that your weekly supply zone is still intact, meaning that price can't move past that $200 area. So it is still intact there, but it has been tapped into, meaning that the more time price comes into this area, the less orders, the less interested sellers are to sell this area, and they may come back into this area here to sell off. So what that could mean is we could have price, since price rejected off of this area again, it looks like it may be coming back down into our weekly demand, which means we could see another 150 Hershey, which is completely fine. You can get it for cheap. But what we could see here is we could see a move back down in this area to finally break through the 200 mark. Now, that again, this is potentially and only if we can maintain this area. So all in all, I like Hershey. I like the stock. And as always, if this video is helpful, feel free to like, subscribe, comment, guys. Thank you, and happy investing.